Unit 2 has explored the unique nature of World War II and how its devastating effects restructured the world order. World War II was a global catastrophe. Total war had not only ravaged Europe, but also Asia and North Africa, while deeply impacting the Americas and sub-Saharan Africa. As a result, a new world order emerged that was less European-centered, afflicted by superpower tensions, and more deeply rooted in the principles of socialism, racial equality, and international collaboration. World War II had given rise to dreams for a better world. This was because World War II proved unusually destructive, devastating infrastructure, while spurring widespread civilian suffering. The horrors of World War II culminated in a trial of Axis leaders, the renunciation of fascist principles, and the cry for an international system predicated on international cooperation, universal rights, and peaceful trade in the place of national competition, war, and militant racism. World War II had given rise to the Atlantic Principles as a formula for world regeneration. With the 1941 Atlantic Charter, the West picked up the glove thrown down by the Axis. They renounced Nazi barbarism, and they elevated World War II into a global struggle between fascism and democracy to determine the future. Stalin was not a party to the Atlantic Conference, nor did he support the liberal sentiments embedded in the Atlantic Charter. After Hitler unleashed his brutal annihilation war in the Soviet Union, however, the Russians came to share Western abhorrence for fascism and joined their crusade against fascism. During the course of the war, both East and West officially endorsed the Atlantic Principles as a template for post-war reconstruction. In this way, World War II had given momentum for the post-war construction of a new international system. Following Germany and Japan's surrender, the Atlantic Principles of peace and prosperity were enshrined in the edifice of a new international system. From 1945 to 1948, the United Nations, the Bretton Woods system, the Nuremberg Laws, the Geneva Conventions, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights emerged. Collectively, these liberal, democratic, and humanistic values served as the bedrock for the modern state and our contemporary international system, even if the advent of the Cold War meant that they fell far short of the ambitions of their architects in terms of protecting ordinary people from the scourge of war. World War II had also overthrown the pillars of the previous world system, enabling a more bipolar world system to emerge. Before World War II, Europe's great powers controlled most of the world through the colonial system. World War II, however, devastated, bankrupted, and discredited Europe. The Axis powers were also devastated, while the great powers' grip over their global colonies weakened, enabling the United States and Soviet Union to fill the global vacuum as military superpowers that brooked no rival except each other. World War II also encouraged the foundations for a new global economy. At Bretton Woods in 1944, Allied representatives laid the foundations for post-war reconstruction. Appreciating that World War II was in many ways an outgrowth and symptom of the Great Depression, delegates sought to erect an international economic system that would prevent a recurrence of the trade wars and national rivalries that had haunted the previous decade. The most tangible achievement of the Bretton Woods Conference was the creation of the International Monetary Fund, a system that ensured fixed exchange rates for national currencies. To facilitate trade, the Western powers also agreed in 1946 to the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, GATT. This established a forum for lowering trade barriers and laid the foundation for the free market economy that reigns across the globe today. Finally, World War II led to the Cold War. Although the Grand Alliance against Nazism had stood firm during the war, at the 1945 Yalta Conference, divergent and incompatible Western and Soviet visions for the post-war future surfaced. Despite their inability to agree on a comprehensive post-war settlement, the wartime allies found sufficient common ground to continue their war, defeat Nazism, and agree on the outlines for a new international system. Still, mounting animosity between the superpowers complicated the task of reconstruction and increasingly haunted international relations. As we will see in Unit 3, after the 1948 to 1949 Berlin crisis, the tension between Stalin and the West escalated into a global struggle between Soviet-sponsored communism and the capitalist camp led by the United States.